Most of you aren't subscribed. Make sure to subscribe, as it helps out the channel. Without further ado, sitting on a couch, with his summons beside him, Kelvin puts on an evil demeanor, stating that Kristoff and his members were too weak. Playing up the evil character, Kelvin mocks the heroes, prompting them to officially introduce themselves as Toya Kanzaki, Setsuna Shiga, Nana Mizuoka and Miyabi Kuromiya. Promising that they'll defeat evil scum like Kelvin, Kelvin continues to play the villain, mocking the hero's strength, which only enrages Toya. Offering to play a game, Kelvin suggests that he alone will take on the 4 heroes, but this confuses the heroes, as they wonder why Kelvin would even give them such a numbers advantage. Thinking for a bit, Setsuna reasons Kelvin is probably hiding something, and that fighting as 4 will probably be better for them, so they all accept Kelvin's challenge. As Kelvin's summons sit down, preparing to watch Kelvin duel the heroes, they all note how Kelvin had intentionally had the heroes come to Kristoff's hideout, as the heroes will be able to convince everyone that Kristoff is evil. But Kelvin's summons also know that Kelvin wanted to see how strong the heroes truly are himself. Jealous that Kelvin gets to have all the fun, Sarah begins to throw a tantrum, but Kelvin had prepared for this, asking Ifil to fetch the basket he had prepared. Opening the basket, Kelvin asks that Sarah along with the others just sit back and eat, watching him put on a good show. But this time Ifil speaks up, worried that although the heroes are at a much lower level than Kelvin, Kelvin will be in trouble as he's not a close-range fighter. Hearing this, Kelvin scans the heroes' stats, noting how they have some weird skills he's never seen before, but Kelvin surmises that he can use this chance to work on his weaknesses. Hearing this, Ifil realizes that Kelvin will be trying out the new item he crafted, the Rank S Skill Eater. All whilst Kelvin is chatting with his summons, the heroes glare at him, accusing him of all the wrongdoings that Kristoff had actually been doing. With preparations on both sides done, the heroes call forth their fairy grace skills, each blessed by light, wind, water and dark fairies. Charging at Kelvin, Toya attempts to force Kelvin into close combat, but Kelvin had anticipated this, jumping back and blasting Setsuna and Toya with projectiles. Having distracted the heroes, Kelvin realized that Nana has snuck up behind him. He realizes that Nana is in possession of a baby dragon, who spits a beam of fire in Kelvin's direction. Casting agility boost on himself, Kelvin easily evades mid-air, only to dash behind Miyabi, touching her and stealing her skill with his Rank S Skill Eater item. Having been crafted from Victor's armor, Sarah reveals that the Skill Eater can take any skill from anything he touches, but it can only hold 1 skill at a time, but since Kelvin has 2 Skill Eaters, he can steal 2 skills at once. Checking out his stolen skill, Kelvin announces that he had stolen Miyabi's parallel thinking skill, but before he can use it, he dodges Toya's advances. Ordering Nana to heal Miyabi, and Setsuna to protect them, Toya manages to reach Kelvin, swinging his blade, only to be blocked by Kelvin's staff. Knowing that Toya will continue to press him, to prevent him from casting spells, Kelvin commends Toya's thinking, but he states how simple-minded the heroes are. Gripping his fist, Kelvin punches Toya's legendary blade, throwing him off, as Kelvin manages to knock Toya back. This time, Kelvin moves to Toya, sending out a flurry of punches, revealing that he had borrowed Sarah's Rank S martial arts skill. Seeing Toya being pushed back, Setsuna rushes to assist, but Kelvin knows he can't fight both, leaping back and creating a massive stone wall. Believing that the wall will hold the heroes back for a while, Kelvin watches as Setsuna takes a stance, activating her unique skill, only to instantly cut down the stone. Impressed, Kelvin unleashes a huge ball of blue flame, forcing Toya to step in and tank the blow. As the heroes check on Toya's injuries, Toya says he can simply use light magic to heal his wounds, and that their number 1 priority is to defeat Kelvin. But before he can say anything else, Setsuna slaps him, reiterating how the 4 of them were hanging out as high school students, but one day they were magically transported to this world. Meeting Melfina and Colette, the person that summoned them, the heroes could only depend on each other, so hearing Toya have no regard for his injuries pissed his members off, as they all want to make it out alive, and even return home together. Hearing his party's words, Toya realizes he was being selfish, rallying everyone together to take down Kelvin. Using his light spirit, Toya emits a bright light, blinding and impressing Kelvin, as he knows Toya is now using his head to fight. Next, Nana binds one of Kelvin's feet with ice, and Miyabi casts a gravity spell, preventing Kelvin from fleeing. Sensing Toya and Setsuna rushing at him, Kelvin decides to detonate the floor beneath him, blasting Toya and Setsuna back, both only surviving due to their unique skills. As the smoke clears, the heroes are in disbelief that such a powerful spell didn't leave a mark on Kelvin, but Kelvin states that his mastery over the spell allows it to do no damage to himself. Applauding the heroes' teamwork, Kelvin begins giving the heroes tips, asking that Nana and Miyabi shoot projectiles to help Toya and Setsuna get close to their targets, and suggests that Toya and Setsuna use speed and agility skills to help move towards their enemies in unpredictable directions. Humiliated that an enemy is looking down on them, the heroes decide to put their all into their next attacks. With Toya dual-wielding and unleashing his sword's power, Setsuna and Toya dash at Kelvin. But Kelvin is caught off guard when Nana releases her ultimate ice spell, binding Kelvin and preventing him from casting any counter spells. Next, Miyabi calls forth a powerful ogre, having it lift her up, allowing her to shoot a dark spell at Kelvin. But Kelvin can't help but smile, calling forth several golems to block any incoming attacks only to distract the heroes. In the meantime, Kelvin activates his newly acquired parallel thinking, analyzing the ice spell that is binding him. To go even further, he begins crafting a spell of his own, drawing the attention of the heroes, prompting Setsuna to begin cutting through the golems with her almighty cleave skill. Just then, Kelvin had created his new skill, instantly breaking the ice spell binding him. Seeing Setsuna approaching fast, with an agility boost, Kelvin commends her for taking his advice, but before she can reach him, Kelvin knocks her out, intercepting her strike. Sensing Miyabi and her ogre behind, Kelvin jumps back, but he knows the weakness of a summon is always the summoner, instantly dashing towards Miyabi and knocking her out. As the ogre summon begins to disappear, Kelvin turns to Nana, who is riding her dragon, casting an ice barrier, planning on distracting Kelvin long enough for Toya to strike. Sadly, Kelvin unleashes a binding spell, following up by knocking Nana unconscious and out of the sky. Catching Nana, Toya becomes infuriated, rushing Kelvin with his blades, demanding to know why such a powerful person is not using his talent to save the world. Spotting Toya's messy fighting style, Kelvin easily catches Toya with an uppercut, but before Toya falls unconscious, Kelvin scolds Toya for trying to lecture him on what to do with his power. As Toya wakes up, he's surprised to see his party gather around him, and all is okay. Sitting up, Toya spots a little girl chatting with Kelvin, scared that Kelvin is terrorizing her. But having a closer look, Toya spots Clotho, learning that Kelvin is the adventurer that had saved the people captured, and is the one that summoned the powerful slime. Personally apologizing for tricking the heroes, Toya wonders why Kelvin would do such a thing, but he deduces that Kelvin was probably trying to make them stronger as a team. Begging for forgiveness, Toya promises to listen to Kelvin moving forward, hoping to get stronger under Kelvin's teachings, but the first thing Kelvin asks the heroes to do is to all strip. Moving ahead in time, Kelvin has returned to Guildmaster Mist, handing over the captured people, who thank Kelvin for rescuing them. With Kristoff and his party captured, Mist states that she will now be able to begin investigating and cracking down on those related to the Black Mist, without any need to fear public opinion. As Kelvin bids Mist farewell, Mist wonders where Kelvin will be heading to next, but all Kelvin can say is that he'll be playing a game with some new friends. Cutting to a cave near the sea, we see the four heroes fighting a giant octopus, with Toya blown back by the creature. Seeing this, Setsuna rushes to cut down the creature, but her blade only bounces off the creature's flexible skin. Whilst this happens, Kelvin and his party are enjoying the show. Suddenly the octopus begins charging up a powerful strike, prompting Kelvin to tell Miyabi and Nana to keep watch of Toya and Setsuna, as they need to help them out if they are in trouble. As some time goes by, Kelvin is getting more and more bored, making Sarah ask why Kelvin is so committed to training people he has just met. But Kelvin thinks about how Melfina was the one who picked them and that they are actually all from Japan as well, so he feels like he has to take care of them. Getting an idea, Sarah suggests that once they get stronger, Kelvin and her should test them, which Kelvin agrees with. After some more time passes, the heroes finally manage to slay the octopus, signaling everyone to have lunch. With everyone sitting down and chatting, the heroes begin talking about how they've noticed dungeon monsters being stronger, ever since the Demon King had been revived. Opening up, the heroes talk about how they were summoned here, and that the first person they met in this world was Colette, the priestess that summoned them. Getting serious, Kelvin questions Toya, reiterating that the heroes are very weak at the moment, wondering what the heroes would do if they were to face a dungeon boss right now. Just then, Sarah rushes towards them, having caught something big whilst fishing. It's revealed that Sarah had accidentally caught a S-rank dungeon dragon, who had been sleeping in the sea. Ignoring Sarah's antics, Kelvin continues to press the heroes, demanding to know what they would do if they encounter a stronger enemy than them. With a calm expression, Toya states that he'll run and escape the enemy, as there is no point allowing his ego to control his actions. Hearing this, Kelvin is satisfied that the heroes will not mindlessly charge at an enemy and give away their lives so meaninglessly. As their conversation wraps up, we cut to several days later, where Kelvin is meeting up with the heroes at the town's boat ports. Thanking Kelvin for all he's done, the heroes all receive a pendant from Kelvin as a parting gift. As the heroes sail away on a boat, they think about how Kelvin and his party were so powerful, having easily defeated that S-rank sea dragon, hoping to one day meet again, but be stronger next time. Back on land, Kelvin watches the heroes sail away, but suddenly turns to Gerald, asking if the Lizea Empire, the empire responsible for cursing Gerald's home, is across the ocean. Shocked, Gerald is surprised to hear that Kelvin still remembers his backstory, but Kelvin asks Gerald if their party as of right now could wipe out the entire empire. Pondering deeply for a bit, Gerald grows excited at avenging his home, but Kelvin reasons that they should probably get much stronger before they consider such a thing. As Kelvin and Gerald meet back up with Ephil compliments Kelvin's kind heart, revealing that the pendants are able to give the wearers a boost to all their stats, and even have a secret functionality in case of emergencies. Before Kelvin can reveal what that secret is, Sarah shows up, asking to know what they're talking about. Before Kelvin can scold Sarah for being so nosy, Sarah tells Kelvin that a messenger sent by Mist is here. Hearing this, Kelvin tells everyone that the time has come, where he'll finally get to taste the nostalgic feeling of rice again, as they will be meeting with the king of this town. Heading to the king's castle, everyone notes the Japanese-styled castle, but Gerald states the first ever king of this town was actually summoned from another world, and probably influenced how things would behave here. As they enter the castle, they all take off their shoes, kneeling before the ruler of the castle. Introducing herself as Tsubaki Fujiwara, Kelvin immediately notes how the ruler's name is definitely Japanese-styled. Checking on his summons, Kelvin notes how formal Sarah is acting, teasing her being a completely different person compared to her usual childish self. Suddenly Tsubaki speaks up, thanking Kelvin and his party for not only capturing the Black Wind bandits but also slaying the rank S dragon guarding the seas. As a token of appreciation, Tsubaki states that she'll grant any wish of Kelvin's, but is surprised to hear that Kelvin only wishes for a crop that is only found here in town. Smiling, Tsubaki reveals that this was all a test, as normal people would be greedy and ask for many things, but Kelvin is the first to impress her. Ordering her people to give Kelvin rice, she unveils a banquet specially prepared to celebrate Kelvin and his party's amazing feats. As Kelvin stuffs his face with his old world's cuisine, Gerald and Sarah are seen indulging in some alcohol, all whilst Ephil is learning some recipes from the chefs responsible for this special meal. Several days later, Kelvin reveals that he has been staying in the castle, as Tsubaki has invited him and his party to rest for a while. Hearing a knock at the door, Ephil appears with some Japanese food, which she has beautifully prepared. Ephil tells Kelvin that the others are all training, but Kelvin could care less, as Queen Tsubaki is now in the same room sharing a meal with him. Wondering why Tsubaki is even here, Tsubaki states that she simply wants to taste Ephil's cooking, amazed that she's able to pick up on the recipes and cooking styles so fast. Knowing that Ephil's rank S cooking ability is probably the reason for Ephil's amazing food, Kelvin suddenly notices Tsubaki getting too close with him, rubbing against him, asking that he and his party permanently stay at her castle. Fighting Tsubaki's advances, Kelvin refuses her offer, stating that he must return to his previous town, as he can't stay in one place. Apologizing for being selfish, Tsubaki reveals that she can help get Kelvin and his party back to the other town fast, taking them to a teleporting gate. Wondering why the heroes didn't just teleport to their next location, Kelvin learns that teleporting takes a massive amount of energy and that both countries must allow people to use their gates. Finally returning to the inn, Claire teases Kelvin for catching the eye of Tsubaki, the ruler of a country, but Kelvin just ignores Claire. Eiffel suddenly wonders what Kelvin would be doing today, prompting Kelvin to say that he'll be relaxing today, since he has just bought a new house. With Kelvin and his party amazed at the upgraded space, Sarah can't help but explore the building, prompting Eiffel to check out the kitchen, Gerald to find a good training location and Clotho to explore the outside. Checking out the palace himself, Kelvin is happy to see a bath in his new home, but is soon called to greet his new housekeepers. Recognizing them as the girls that he saved, the girls officially introduce themselves as Ellie and her daughter Luca. That night, Kelvin bathes for the first time in this world, immediately heading to bed, thinking about how it feels weird to be sleeping in an actual bed. Before he drifts off, he notices that Melfina has returned, excited to see her avatar. Reaching out his arm, Kevlin calls for Melfina to appear, finally summoning her. Entering through a gate, Melfina shows off her majestic wings, smirking as she meets Kelvin's eyes. Kelvin can't help but admit that Melfina is his type. The next morning, Kelvin and all his summons watch as Melfina indulges on her first meal, with her new avatar. Kelvin notes how refreshing it is to finally have her back with the gang, but Melfina states that it was quite a hassle to meet back up, as Kelvin had moved into this new mansion without telling her. Butting in, Gerald doesn't recognize Melfina, asking who she is, but is surprised to recognize her voice. Hearing this, Sarah officially greets Melfina, which makes Melfina uneasy, as she feels bad for Sarah's father, the former Demon King, being slayed in the world Melfina governed. Sarah states that Melfina shouldn't feel guilty, as Sarah knows that Melfina was not responsible for summoning the hero that ended up taking her father's life. Moving on, Melfina teases Kelvin, having assumed that Kelvin would bring more girls into his party whilst she was away, but Kelvin denies this. Changing locations, the gang wonder if they should continue to call Melfina her name, as Melfina is a unique name that only the goddess of this world has. Agreeing, Melfina asks everyone to officially call her Mel, which everyone is happy to do. Since Melfina is grateful for Kelvin summoning her, she casts a Grace of Reincarnation spell on Kelvin, as a gift. Melfina explains that the Grace spell has two unique effects. The first is that Kelvin will be able to prevent death from a fatal wound once every month. Hearing this, Kelvin is shocked that he has just been given such an absurd skill, but Sarah notes how she has no reason to hold back when sparring him. The second skill and more important skill, Melfina states that Kelvin now has the ability to summon his own heroes. Wanting to test out Melfina's capabilities, Sarah and Melfina head to the training room, both advancing towards one another. As Gerald and Luca watch the girls' epic battle, Kelvin is seen outside, wondering if Toya and the other heroes had made it to their destination safely. Kelvin also begins to think about how the prophecy didn't specify who should slay the Demon King, and only that the Demon King needed to be killed. Back with the girls, Sarah unsheathes the claws from one of her gloves, prompting Melfina to match her power, revealing her angelic armor. When the girls clash once again, Sarah is barely able to overpower Melfina, impressing Melfina. Seeing Melfina and Sarah so fired up, Gerald wonders the reason for the girls' energy, but learns that they were fighting to see who could share a bed with Kelvin that night. Later that day, Sarah and Melfina wash up in the indoor hot spring, thankful to Kelvin for healing their wounds. With Eiffel entering to check up on the girls, the three all agree that Kelvin is clearly distraught about something, having barely spoken all day. As the sun begins to set, Kelvin is seen gazing off into a nearby pond, only to be called by Melfina, who has brought him some snacks. Wanting to cheer Kelvin up, Melfina reminds him that she is his wife, but Kelvin is only interested in learning why heroes are so important, when the Demon King can be slayed by anyone. Getting serious, Melfina states that in this world, the cycle of a Demon King being born and slayed is inevitable, and even as the governor of the world, Melfina is unable to predict who the next Demon King is. Additionally, all Demon Kings have a built-in skill, Papillas. Papillas warps the user's personality, forcing them to become an evil being, but Papillas also grants the users immunity to all skills in this world, making them like a god. Hearing this, Kelvin wonders how the Demon King can die, but Melfina reminds Kelvin that the Demon King is immune to all skills in this world, so beings from other worlds can bypass the Demon King's immunity as they are not from this world. This explains why no one but summons from other worlds end up slaying the Demon King. Since Kelvin was reincarnated with no memories, he was able to easily take in everything that was happening with this world, but he can only imagine how tough it was for Toya and his party to accept their new situation. Still, Kelvin is disgusted by the idea of bringing people from another world, that had lives and a future, forcing them to restart in this new world. Knowing this, Melfina reveals that Kelvin can summon heroes from another world, via teleportation or reincarnation. Teleportation summons heroes that were still alive from another world, whereas reincarnation takes the soul of a dead person and brings them to this world. In other words, Toya and his party were teleported, and Kelvin was reincarnated. With another option, Kelvin wonders if he can pick the reincarnated soul, but Melfina states that reincarnated souls are chosen at random and that it takes a huge amount of MP. With more MP used for the summon, the stronger the hero is. As Melfina leaves, she asks that Kelvin not rush into things. That night, Kelvin gathers everyone in his mansion, informing them that he has decided to reincarnate a hero and have them join his party. Since he knows that he should continue to expand his party, he states that adding a hero to his party will make it more interesting. Calling for all his summons to return, Kelvin drinks a potion to completely restore his MP, to prepare to cast the summoning spell. Chanting the reincarnation spell, Kelvin chooses to use up all but one of his MP, to summon a single hero, hoping to summon the strongest hero he possibly can. As he slams his staff into the ground, he carves out a summoning circle, passing all MP into the circle. As Kelvin waits for the summoning to finish, he wonders what type of person the hero could be, reasoning that the summon is probably choosing their skills at this moment. Suddenly Kelvin is interrupted when the circle begins to glow. Imploding and leaving behind a cloud of dust, the circle summons a child, who Kelvin greets, prompting the child to introduce themselves as Ryo Saki. Ryo Saki states how she was just talking with an angel, who Kelvin learns is someone that Melfina had placed in charge whilst she was away. Seeing that Ryo is still just a child, Kelvin apologizes to Ryo for summoning her, but Ryo states that she was grateful to be given a second chance, breaking down into tears, before collapsing due to exhaustion. Kelvin wonders if this was right to summon a child, but Melfina reassures Kelvin that Ryo is the strongest hero that Kelvin could have summoned. Just then, Kelvin too begins to stumble around, having used up all his MP, Kelvin collapses next to Ryo. That night, Ryo awakes from her dream, having remembered that she had passed away in a hospital at such a young age. Heading out of bed, Ryo admires the beautiful outside world, running and falling onto the grass with joy. Having spotted Ryo leave her room, Kelvin walks up to Ryo, revealing that he too was reincarnated into this world, but unlike her he has no memories of his past life. Kelvin goes on to explain his journey, and how he met the party members and grew so strong, inspiring Ryo. Getting serious, Kelvin asks if Ryo really wants to be here, but Ryo reveals that she had been sick all her life, to a point of being bedridden in a hospital, unable to play outside with other kids, and only able to watch through the hospital window of other kids playing. Since Ryo was happy to be given a second chance in life with this new body, Ryo offers to join Kelvin's party, as thanks for everything. Happy to see Ryo ecstatic, Kelvin mentions how he would like to keep Ryo's identity of a reincarnated hero a secret, and instead have her be his little sister in this world. Hearing this, Ryo gets excited, having been an only child her entire life. On top of that, Kelvin asks to change Ryo's name to Ryan, which Ryan happily agrees with, earning herself a head pat as Kelvin welcomes her to the team. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like and comment.